Hey everyone, Kevin P. McAuliffe here for lowpost.com, and I'm back again with the next lesson in our Scratch Essentials tutorial series. And today we're talking about versions inside of Scratch. Versions are how you can get in and create multiple grades attached to each shot in your timeline, so that if you have a producer or director sitting beside you, you can cycle through the looks that they're expecting to see literally with the click of the keyboard or the mouse. Now, let's keep our introduction short. Let's just get into Scratch and start talking about versions. Alright, so let's Command or Alt and Tab into Assimilate Scratch. And this is the shot we're going to be working with in this lesson. I've stripped this project right down because we're going to focus our versions on a single shot. Now, I have added a second shot in here just so that I can show you towards the end of the lesson how we're going to apply the grades that we've created quickly and easily to this last shot. All right, so we are talking in this lesson about versions plural, and what that assumes is that we are able to add multiple versions to a single shot, and we are. Now, you remember in the previous lesson I showed you that we have the ability to call up the Layers panel and the Versions panel by tapping on either the left side of the screen or the right side of the screen. Now, one thing that I like about this lesson is that this is where we're now going to start to cross over concepts from lesson to lesson. We talked about layers in our previous lesson, and layers are going to come into play when we're talking about creating versions. Not quite yet, though, so let's just hide that panel and let's talk about versions. Now, there's a couple ways that we can start adding versions to a shot. I'll show you two different ways, two different minor workflow changes, but you'll see how powerful both workflows are right now. So let's come in, and with our default version, every shot that you're going to have inside of Scratch is going to have a base version attached to it. We could start doing our grading right now. So let's do this. I'm going to head to the ColorFX module. I'm in the numeric panel, and let's just do, I like to call this a Michael Bay kind of grade. And what that is that's the overblown saturation, kind of like that. Now, if you weren't paying close enough attention, you may not have noticed the fact that as we were doing this grade, the version thumbnail was actually updating. Now, one thing I also want to show you is the fact that I can come in here and hit play, and if I want to now, I can actually come in and make these changes on the fly, and you'll notice that that thumbnail is updating on the fly as this shot is playing. So you can see how powerful working in Scratch is. So I'm just going to stop this right now. Now you'll see that as soon as I hit stop, the thumbnail immediately updates to show me where we currently are in this shot. Now what I want to do is to create a new version, but what's important to keep in mind is that as soon as I come in and say add version, what Scratch is going to do is it's going to take the grade that I was currently working on and it's going to push it up a notch, and it's going to add the grade that we're going to be adjusting on this current version that's here. Now I know it's the current version because I can see the yellow box around it. So if I was to come in and reset this back to its default parameters to get in and start the grade from scratch, as soon as I come down and say reset, you'll see it's done it to the bottommost thumbnail, and I can now click through the different versions to get a look at what they look like. Now, that's one workflow, which is to get in, and as you grade the first one and you say add version, it duplicates that grade so you can add to it. It duplicates it to add to it. It duplicates to add to it. If you want to go back to the base shot, you have to be going down and hitting reset. So here's another way that you can do the same thing. I'm just going to come in, we're just going to delete these versions right back to the base version, and all I'm going to do right here is instead of grading this shot, is I'm simply going to add a version. I'll just click right up here. Let's just come back to the balance. Let's just give this shot a bit of a red look. Okay, we're going to come in here, again, add version. We're going to come in here, we're going to give this shot a bit of a blue version. Let's just come down here, very nice, and last but certainly not least, let's add a version, and we're going to give this, of course, the old green look. There we go. So now what we have is the base shot, red, green, and of course blue. Now again, we can come back, hit play, change these grades or versions as we go by simply clicking through them, just like such. Now this method works great if you're a mouse clicker. However, if you're a keyboard shortcut user like me, you can cycle through your versions by simply using the page up and page down key on the keyboard. Alright, so we've now created a few different versions, and what I want to do now is show you that there's actually more than one way that we can rearrange these versions. Now, why would we ever need to get in and rearrange versions? The reason that you need to get in and rearrange versions is the base version that you have on a layer stack or a clip stack is what's going to be rendered out if we were to render this shot out right now. So if we were to render this out right now, we're not rendering out red, green, or blue. We're rendering out the shot with just the lookup table applied to it. Now we can get in and rearrange the stacking order by simply grabbing any one of the versions and just rearranging them like such. Now what we also have the ability to do, and I'm just going to head back to the construct module for just 1 second. You'll see in the construct module on our slot for this current shot, we have the exact order that we had when we were over here in the ColorFX module, which would lead me to believe that if we grabbed any one of these grades and just rearranged them like such by grabbing blue and dragging it right down to the bottom, when we come back, you'll see that's immediately been updated. So if we click render now, the blue version is what is going out to our file. Now let's talk about how things are going to start to cross over just a little bit. We talked about layers in the previous lesson, and what I want to do now is take that concept a little bit to the next level. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start applying layers to these versions as well as the grades. Let me show you what I mean by this. I'm going to come over to the layers panel and we're going to create a new layer. Now keep in mind that right now we have our blue version selected. The layer that we've just applied is now attached to that version. So let's just call this circle. Okay, I'm going to come down here, we're going to call it circle. Okay, and with circle we're going to come down to canvas. Now keep in mind, every layer that you add has a canvas applied to it. You can actually see the canvas right across here. What we're going to do is get in and change the canvas from a rectangle to a circle. Now you might be thinking, well Kev, well who cares about that? What difference does it make? Everything is still blue. It might be blue, however, once you've gotten in and placed the shape how you want it to be, so if I want it to be an oval for example, and I place it over here, if I have nothing selected and I come in and I make some changes, let's just come back to numeric and we'll just make a little lift change like such. You'll notice that what it's done, you'll notice that what Scratch has done is it's made that grade change to the layer, but of course it hasn't done anything to where that circle was. It's because we didn't have the layer selected. If I have the layer selected and I now come in and we adjust the master gain, it's only going to do it in the area of that circle. Okay, now let's take that concept to our red layer or our red version. What we're going to do now is we're going to add another layer. We're going to call this, I'll just call it square, even though we're not going to be adding a square. It's going to be more like a rectangle. Now let's come back to our canvas. We already have a rectangle applied there. Let's just zoom our layer back a little bit. Let's just position that right about there. You'll remember we have to have that rectangle selected so that when we come back to our balance and we come in and make a change, it's going to be noticeable right away. Let's do one last one to green. Let's come back to the canvas. I think in this case we're going to do a little bit of a free form here, kind of like this. Very nice. Make sure it's selected. We're going to let's just come back to balance, add some red in there. And what you now have is layers attached to versions so that when we click through, you'll see that they're being updated as we go. There's our base layer again. So you can now really start to get in and create some powerful versions that are going to include everything that you can add inside of layers to each one of these versions. Okay, so this is a huge concept to understand and to keep in mind, and this is now how we can now start to get in, and maybe we need to isolate the sky to get in and to do a grade change to just the sky. This is now how we can create a version, we can apply our shape layer or our canvas to it, and we can now get in and start creating multiple versions of what the sky is going to look like very quickly and very easily. All right, so now that I have all these versions that I've applied to shots, what I'd now like to do is get in and be able to have them accessible to me when I'm working in the rest of the project, or even possibly when I'm working in new projects. Now what I'm going to do, just for the sake of doing this, is I'm actually going to delete these layers because we're only going to deal with our grades for the next part of the lesson here. Let's just delete all these. Very nice. Okay, and let's now get in and let's talk a little bit about trays. Now to access trays, we're going to navigate down here to the lower left hand corner of the Scratch interface. I'm going to click on the Trays button. You'll now see that we have access to two tabs, the Project tab and the Gallery tab. Now what do these two tabs represent? What these tabs are for is that any shot reference that we put into the project tab is going to be accessible inside of this current project that we're working on. Any of the grades that we add into the gallery are going to be accessible across any of the projects that we have on the system that we are working on. Now, for the purposes of this lesson, I've actually gotten in and created my own tray called, appropriately enough, Kevin's Grades, that we are going to be taking our grades from over here in our version stack, and we're going to be applying them in here so that we can then get in and apply them to other shots. So to do this, all we have to do is to grab one of the grades. I'm going to take it and drag it and drop it down, and I'm going to add it under Kevin's Grades. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. As much as I appreciate this grade being called BeachView02_FO, that's already too much and not representative of what this grade actually looks like. It's more or less just a green grade, and I want to call it that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate over to Edit, and I'm going to enable Edit. Now when I come over, I can actually rename this grade whatever I want. I'm just going to call this Green Grade. Okay. Now let's just turn Edit off. We're going to come back to our versions. Let's take blue. We're going to drag it over here, drop it in here, say Edit, and we're going to call this, appropriately enough, Blue Grade. And of course, last but certainly not least, let's grab our red grade, drag it down here, drop it in. We're going to edit this, call it, of course, Red Grade. Okay. Once we have our grades in here, we're now going to head down to the next shot in our timeline, which is this shot of the beach. Now you might be thinking this is where we're going to be able to take all of our grades and we're going to start applying them like crazy. However, we're not going to do that because, to be honest, I'm not really sure which one is going to work the best over top of this shot here. What I'd really like to do is to get a preview of what it's going to look like first. I'm going to select the green grade. I'm going to navigate right over here to where it says preview, and I'm simply going to click on it. Once I do, you'll now see that that preview is applied to our shot, so we can now get in, and before we even apply this grade to this shot, we can get an idea of what this shot is going to look like quickly and easily. Now you might be thinking that when we're ready to get in and add the grade to the shot that we're going to use the add option, but we don't want to add the grade to the shot. We want to apply it. Now with the grade selected and I say apply, boom, there it is right there. Now keep in mind the same concept works as far as getting in and adding your versions. If you didn't want to do that and have it applied to the main version, you can add a version, then come in, make sure it's selected, say apply, and now it's applied to that version of the shot. Okay? Now keep in mind that you also have the option of apply plus. Now what does apply plus mean? This is one thing I love inside of Scratch, a fantastic feature. When I select apply plus, I can actually choose which parameters I'd like to have included in the application of this grade to that version. Very cool, very cool, very cool. And it works in reverse as well. If I'm taking a grade and I want to add it over here into my grades, if I come down and say add plus, I can choose what features or what parameters are included in bringing this grade from the version stack over here into my trays. Now, there is another way that we can get in and add grades to shots. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to close this window up and I'm going to head up to the memory parameter. Now you'll see that I already have a few memories in here right now, but what we have the ability to do at any time is to take any one of these grades and drag them and drop them into any one of the 1 through 8 memories that we have up here. So this way, at any time, what we have the ability to do is to come up and simply choose the one that we're going to want to apply, and we can apply it just like such to whatever version happens to be applied. And keep in mind, this also includes applying versions that have layers attached to them as well. One thing that I also do want to point out is that at any time, if you want to quickly add your current grade to the memories panel, all you need to do is shift and click on any one of the slots 1 through 8, and your current grade will immediately appear up in the memories window. Now, we've really just scratched the surface of what we can do using our versions in conjunction with the layers, in conjunction with our trays. We're going to be getting more into this in future lessons and showing you some even more in-depth and cool tips and tricks so that you can take your Scratch game to the next level. All right, now as always, if you have any questions, you have any comments or ideas for upcoming lessons or courses, I want you to head on over and post them in our forums at lowpost.com/forums. And if you have any questions for me, you can always send them to kevinpmcauliffe@gmail.com.